Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators football podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by our other host, Mr. Randy. Randy, how we feeling tonight?
B, what's going on, my man? Feeling great. It's warm. I got to see the sun today. I am thawing out after frigid weather here in North Central Florida. I feel better.
Yes. So we're probably making people angry talking about thawing out in early February, but yeah, that's definitely happening.
Right.
You're on a warming trend for sure. I think I saw it's supposed to be 80s here all week long. So sorry for those who are not in that climate, and I'd say that I feel bad, but you know what? You can brag in summer. So there you go. All right.
There you go.
So to that end, tonight's episode, as previously mentioned, will be a review of National Signing Day because today was National Signing Day, not obviously nearly as significant as it was once upon a time. In fact, we signed no one today, as most top schools didn't really sign anybody either. There were a few, but not many. So typical for this thing, right? It's all about early signing day now. That's why we put all the effort into the recruiting class and evaluating at that point. We do have some updates on that we'll talk about, but to that end, we will all get started as always with our intro, our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda. Goodness, it's just really getting to be a mouthful. So our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our accuracy disclaimer is that our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes either from ESPN or stats.ncaa.org, and recruiting data comes from on3.com. Slight caveat to that tonight, there will be some 247 data in recruiting as well, but we will identify it as such. Our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss observation of player personnel decisions as well as on-the-field execution. So, agenda for this evening, we are going to talk briefly, as mentioned, about the final signing of the class, right? The end of signing day as it relates to both what we had going on at the early signing period and now. We will then talk about the new signings, most of them being transfers. There is one more recruit that we brought in as well that we'll discuss. We will then have a conversation about coaching changes that have happened since we last reported and since we last discussed it. And then we will have a discussion of what we still need, both in coaching and really in the class itself as far as players, what the roster looks like and if there are any gaps. And last but not least, have the state of the team right now, momentum, attitude, and posture for the 2025 season, what that looks like. So to that end, let's get things started, and I'll turn it over to you to start talking about our new signings from the transfer portal and in the recruiting class as well. Get us going there, Randy.
You got it, B. And that's the thing, folks. We're going to go through this step by step. We're going to try and make it as simple and clean cut as possible. We don't have a lot to add. You know, at the end of the day, it was short, it was sweet, it was probably, there could have been some more pieces in there, but either way, here we go. I'm going to kick it off with, oh boy, did I do that really? Yes, I know. I'm sorry. My apologies. All the dads out there, you're welcome. Tommy Doman added on December 13th, 2024, entered the portal on December 6th from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And please note, as B mentioned, early National Signing Day was on December 4th. So this is everything after we dropped that pod for early National Signing Day. So basically with Tommy here, during his junior season, he punted, he kicked off, he was the holder for all 15 games during their run in the 23 National Championship season. I feel sick just saying that, but it's okay. Average about 44.3 yards a punt, had a career-long 71 yards on 53 punts that season. He did earn the third team All Big Ten honors at the end of the season. He was ranked number 9 at overall punters by On3 in the 25 transfer portal rankings. And in case those of you are wondering, didn't we sign a punter? Yeah, true freshman, Hayden Craig, 3-star, number 6 total punter in All-America. But again, to start a true freshman punter like that in the SEC, we're going to let him sit and learn from Doman in a little bit, and he will be there in a year or so. So that's all I got on Tommy Doman. B, anything you got to add to that?
Yeah, so a couple of different things here. Not much. First of all, I had the long of 71 for sure. I also had a long of 68 last year. His net punting was a little low last year. It was 42.6, right? So that's not the best, and he only put 4 inside the 20. So that's not spectacular. However, I would say that if we look at Michigan's offense last year, they were not spectacular. So that could have something to do with the nature of why his average was a little lower because he
Average.
could kick a lot
Yep.
more, right? And why he only had 4 inside the 20 because often he was probably kicking from his 20. Yeah, I did. I went there. So
That's
at any
funny.
rate, he does have a legitimate leg, though, as you've heard, the 68 to 71. Like he can kick the ball when he gets a hold of it. Not saying he'll do that every time, but he can certainly do that. And it'll be interesting to see with a little more, speed and athleticism. I think on the coverage team there, if he's able to let him rip a little more than maybe he was last year. So that'll be an interesting thing. I think the last thing is just projecting whether or not he's going to be a starter or backup. I think to your point, he will be the starter. It would be surprising if he was not because we're going to want to let the freshman come in, get kind of a lay of the land, get some experience, just a little practice,
Yep.
time and stuff like that. And I think it's going to be good to have an experienced punter, somebody who knows what they're doing. And to your point, who was, third team All Big Ten at one point. So he's not terrible. I mean, heck, they can't even give Jeremy Croshaw, all SEC honors. So, maybe this guy will get him. Who knows? I'm a little
Oy.
salty about that if you can't tell.
Oy.
So, but to that end, that's all I got there. So yeah, I think good addition, probably a smart call to bring him in for a year. I think he's a graduate transfer, but decent pickup. Obviously, it's a punter. We're not going to get too excited. The next player, however, I think we should get very excited.
Ew.
As far as this transfer class goes, this is by far the standout as far as the potential and the just overall athletic traits and stuff. So he is, as I have here, the potential next standout wide receiver transfer for Florida. We've done very well with them the last few years, as we all know. Of course, first Ricky, and then last year Badger and DK, both transfers, right? He may not be from Arizona State. I know. It's okay. But he looks the part for sure. 6'2.5", 205 pounds. To go along with elite speed. He runs a 10.381 in 100 as per Billy on a recent pod. So I didn't find that stat on anywhere. So I'm taking Billy's word for it. So it should be an outstanding combination of speed and athleticism and length, right? All of the above for Lagway to throw to next season. Again, should be a starter here, as mentioned. Even if he plays near his potential, doesn't even have to be to his full potential, and he should still be a starter on this squad. Even though we have a very deep receiver room, it's not overly experienced, right? So that's the thing, and he obviously brings some experience, which is great. So that's what I got on JaMychal. What do you got?
Nice. I like it. Yeah. J. Michael Sturdivant, big guy. It's funny how we have this discrepancy with stats. Now we have the discrepancy with measurements, right? Depending on your source, right? He's anywhere between 6'2" to 6'4", 182 to 213. Quite the variance.
That's a huge gap.
Right?
The 30-pound swing is pretty wild.
I'm telling you, man, unless he's on that Hollywood diet, to make weigh-in. No, but overall great kid, right? 123 receptions for 1,667 yards and 13 touchdowns in 3 seasons. Oddly enough, he's going from a Jumpman school to a Jumpman school. No change there. We love the Jumpman. Hit the portal on December 10th. He officially signed on 12/19. So didn't stay in the portal too long. Obviously, Mr. Gonzalez was out there scouting him early. Redshirt junior, 1 year of eligibility left. Originally recruited to Cal as a 4-star, right? 3-star in the portal, number 5 ranked wide receiver in the portal, and number 24 ranked wide receiver in the 2025 overall coming in. So I agree with you, B. A great weapon. It's a shame he's not from ASU, but that's all right. West Coast guy will take it, and definitely I see him as much firepower and talented players that we do have. He's seen a lot of football. He's seen a lot of the field. I do predict him to be starting. Agreed there.
Yeah, I would agree. And just a quick caveat there before you go on to Kofi. Interestingly, here's a first discrepancy. I noted his transfer ranking in 247 was a 4-star. So that's one of the first discrepancies we're going to talk about tonight. We have many more to discuss, not necessarily directly player related, but we'll get there later. So go ahead.
Awesome. Next up, let's look at our edge. We're adding an edge to the room in Kofi Asari. They entered the portal on December 10th from UMass, and he officially signed on 12/22/24. So Merry Christmas. 6'5", 215 pounds, 3-star out of Worcester, Massachusetts. Um, this kid, it's almost like a Moneyball situation, right? Maybe a little undersized, whatever the case might be. And here's the other thing that I think is really neat. If all goes as planned, Kofi is going to be taking on that jack role, that mid jack role outside under Mike Peterson. So one of the players that he is closely compared to, believe it or not, George Gums.
Yep.
And if those of you know the impact that George Gums made, massive impact during his first year at UF, because he came from a small, was it Northern Illinois, B?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Exactly. So when you look at a program like UMass, you think Marcus Camby, Calipari, the 90s basketball, right? That's what you think when you think UMass. You don't think football. And so looking at Kofi, I mean, he's chiseled. He's an absolute specimen of physicality, very physical, great way. He uses his hands, his feet very well. And outside of that, a 3-star portal ranking. So he's going to have the ability to come in and make an impact on the edge. Now, is he going to start right away? It's going to depend on what happens in the spring. I'd put him up there as having a great chance to start, although I don't know if he will start. So that's the only question mark I had on Kofi. What do you got, B?
Yeah, so he's a big question mark. You hit the nail on the head, right? He's got the potential to be another diamond in the rough. George Gums, that's the comparison I have on here as well. Though
Yeah.
it was made by others too, obviously. And here's an interesting for you. So as a recruit, there was 3-star and 3-star both in the recruiting and the transfer. However, as a recruit, he had a rating of 82 per 247 and moved up to an 86 per 247. So that's a significant jump. Once you get into like close to the 90s, you're talking 4-star, right? So 82 is nowhere in the ballpark, right? But when you move up from an 82 to an 86, now all of a sudden, we're getting on a little higher end, right? We're getting to be where if you were ranked that way coming out of high school, you'd be probably top 500, right? So you're just an interesting climb there. So clearly he's put some stuff on film that the scouts like. And has seen some improvement already, I would say, based on his initial ranking. Starting versus not starting wise, total question mark here, really. I would expect him not to start just because of the seniority and pieces we have in place on this team. However, I think he's a depth piece that's going to play, right? Very much like Gums may come on more as the season goes along. We'll see. Kind of depends on how things, pan out. Obviously, I hope we have it figured out to begin with to a degree, but that's a different pod. We'll talk about that later. But overall, I think at a minimum, you've got a good depth piece here for the D-line potentially, and somebody that's, I think, going to see the field. I would be surprised if he didn't. So there you go. Moving on from there, we'll talk quarterback. Harrison Bailey, transfer. This is a great get, honestly, for a backup QB after the confusion from the Purdy situation. So for those who don't know, not Brock Purdy, goodness. Deshaun Purdy was a little confused. He was a little confused about DJ Lagway's status. He didn't know he was going to start. He thought he was going to come in and compete for the starting job, and the team kind of said, yeah, bro, that's not happening. So he moved on, went back in the portal, and ended up transferring to, I don't remember where, honestly, off the top of my head. Do you know?
I do not.
Yeah, I can't remember where he ended up going. But regardless, he wasn't going to be a starter at Florida, right? This was for a backup role. And to that end, I think Bailey's a great get for this. He's a solid pocket passer, doesn't have great mobility, but he knows how to throw the ball. He can spin it. And this is all secondary because he will be a solid backup, right? And that's what we need. We don't want him to see the field, right? So, I mean, unless it's garbage time, right? We don't want him on the field. So that's the significant thing to consider here. He's got some good stats. He did move down in his original ranking to his transfer ranking. He has not maybe played quite up to expectations, but again, he's going to be the backup. So I think that's fine. I think he'll be a good depth piece there. Better than having, unfortunately, Aiden come off the bench. Love the kid, but he doesn't have it. So I think that's a good get in that regard. What do you got on Harrison?
Yeah, for sure. Deshaun Purdy took an offer with the Demon Deacons, so he will be in Wake Forest.
Seems more appropriate.
Yeah, over there in the Tobacco Road area. But yeah, Harrison Bailey, added on January 20th, transfer from Louisville. by way of a couple schools, by way of Tennessee, believe it or not, right? Originally committed to Tennessee. And here's the other thing too that's kind of shocking about him. He doesn't look at it. He's got the baby face and all that stuff, but 6'5", 231. That's good size for a QB. Good
Yep,
size,
for
right?
sure.
So obviously he's going to be behind Lagway, but now he's going to compete with Aiden and Clay Millen because Aiden's still there, Clay Millen's still there. Tramel Jones, he's there. He's going to see the field. More than likely not, right? So Bailey's well traveled, strong arm. I agree. Great pocket passer. But again, Tennessee recruited him for a reason. He's also played at UNLV before Louisville, and again, that's Louisville, right? I got that right.
That's right. You
You know,
did mess up Worcester earlier, but I'll leave it alone.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, four-star recruit coming out of Marietta, Georgia, 4 ranked quarterback in the 2020 class, according to On3. Number 8 player in the state of Georgia, number 66 all overall prospect. He's got some good pieces. He's seen different offenses. He's thrown the football. He knows a lot of ball. So maybe he's got it in 6 inches between the ears. Let's see if that translates. If he gets any playing time, we can see if he can be a good addition, a strong addition to help with the depth at QB.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Michael Caraway.
Michael Caraway, here we go. All right, so coming out of Southern Miss, okay, enter the transfer portal on December 27th. But he signed on January 17th. So this one took a while. 6'2", 195 pounds. If you go to one site, he's a cornerback. You go to one site, he's a safety. But at the end of the day, this guy, very, very versatile. In 3 seasons at Southern Miss, he accounted for 70 tackles, 7 deflected passes. Played high school football at Polarville, Mississippi, Jefferson Davis County. JUCO guy. Went around. And this is the other interesting thing about him. His last year of eligibility came after the NCAA granted the blanket waiver for the Pavia suit. If you guys remember Diego Pavia, the Vandy quarterback, right? So believe it or not, Caraway has an extra year of eligibility because of the Pavia rule. Very interesting. Outside of that, number 23rd ranked safety in the transfer portal. And he's coming into a very, we had some questions around cornerback and the safety spot, especially, but he's coming into, especially in the cornerback side, a very established room when you look at Devin Moore, Dejon Johnson, Cormani So Devin the senior, Dejon the junior, Cormani's going to be a sophomore. We got 2 other freshmen coming in, as we mentioned before.
You got Grimsley, you got Grimsley and Foster too. Yep.
And Hanks. So it's going to be a packed room, but I like the depth. He's seen a lot of football. That's going to be a good thing to add some experience and a quote unquote older head to that room. What do you got, B?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of it. Again, I'll make the point on him, much like Kofi, he had an increase in his rating. He was originally an 84, went to an 88. So once again, four spots up in numerical, if you will, as far as the rating goes, and now getting real close to 4-star territory, right? Again, right around a 90, maybe even high 89s, you're going to start seeing 4-star status. So really a better ranking than I thought he would be, because I've definitely only heard him referred to as a depth piece. But to your point, I think that's because of what's in the room already, right? We've got a pretty stacked room going on in terms of the depth, which apparently we need, because if we remember last season, corner was like, I don't even know, max attrition, right? It was crazy out there. Ended up rotating Bridges down to play corner because we didn't have enough guys, and had to rotate Thornton into started safety. So it was just wild. It was wild. But at any rate, the secondary got pretty banged up. So again, this is probably just a depth piece, but I do like it. To your point, he's played ball, he's got experience. Those are the kind of things you want to bring to this room. And I think that's going to be good. So to close things out, one last corner / safety. He is in as a corner, but he's projected that he could play safety, and that is our latest recruiting yet, which is a flip from Tennessee. So we heard rumor that this was going to happen on early National Signing Day, but we did not actually see that happen, if you will, at that time. But right before National Signing Day, as in yesterday, Onis Conanbanny signed with us, and he is now committed and signed both. And like I said, he's a flip from Tennessee. So he signed as a corner, but he has the build to play safety as needed. So again, I cited Bridges, right? Remember Bridges from last year? So, this could be a helpful thing depending on where we need him. So the interesting things about him as well are he's evaluated as being very good at press man, but also with the ability to turn his hips and break on the ball. And he is not scared of contact. So I think you're starting to see a Will Harris trend emerging here with guys that are not scared of contact. So just an interesting little thought that I had there, but probably almost certainly not a starter, right? But as a freshman, may see the field depending on the depth available. Hopefully that's not an issue, but he could, and the need. But I like this get. I think he's really solid. They're saying his numbers are like that he's close to 200 pounds and very thick in his core. So he's a good size corner either way, whether he plays safety or corner. And I think it's going to be a nice add. So that's my thoughts on Onus.
Agreed. So added just yesterday, right? As far as the official signing. So this is one thing that I thought I'll add in there. Talked to a good buddy of mine, diehard Tennessee fan, Knoxville fan, wears a Philip Fulmer t-shirt once a week, and he said they were actually they were more concerned when it came to Shady Hayward, right? As far as that flip on early National Signing Day.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, he said they, as in Tennessee faithful, felt like Onus was not committed to Tennessee 100%. I thought that was very interesting. Very interesting. I was like, wait a minute, so sorry about that, and he's like, no, actually, we had a feeling that he was going to go. So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, 6'1", 6'1.5", whatever. 187 pounds, 31st best cornerback in the 2025 class rankings, 7th best recruit coming out of the state of South Carolina. So this is really cool too. Big shift in his recruiting after Florida's upset win at Ole Miss, right? We saw the tweets go out. We saw the plea, right, from Vernell Brown, right? Onus, fam, come on, join us. And that's the other thing too. Long and twitchy, B. I mean, it's long and twitchy. He has the potential to revitalize some of that secondary cake because, of course, we're losing Marshall. We've lost Bridges. And then Jakeem Jackson, of course, to the portal. We won't mention his name again. Outside of that, Will Harris has proven to be an absolute recruiting relationship monster. Bottom line, huge. And then the other thing I like about Onus, French native, spent time in London. He's got backgrounds in soccer, track and field, extremely agile. Big frame DB, defensive back, has some of the tools required to shade the perimeter, but can also settle in as a safety at the next level, right? Not to mention, he has amazing feet, has great footwork. So really love to see what he's got going on there. And he's very comfortable in press man, loves to use his hands, very physical. And not to mention, he's got some of the best technique out of these young players. I mean, all that sounds absolutely fantastic. So let's hope it translates on that field.
It does. And I got to backtrack because we did our agenda here to start, and I talked about we're going to talk about the signing day class, and I skipped right over it. So that's on me. So apologies. I guess it works to do it after we talk about the players and the additions. So we'll talk about that now. So as we talked about on early National Signing Day, I believe we were 11th on both ranking when we closed that out. I believe maybe we were 10th on 3 and 11th on 247. I can't recall. But there's been some re-ranks. There's been some stuff going on. And now the rankings stand at 11th for on 3, which again, it might have been 10th before. I'd have to go back and look. I think it was. But we're 11th now on 3,
yes.
But we are 8th on 247. And we want to talk a minute about why that is, right? Because that's a pretty big gap. You don't typically see that kind of swing. Like if you look at teams, they're usually 1, maybe 2 spots different. But I think this really comes down to the way that these 2 ranking services classify their classes. So what I mean by that is on 3 bases their class almost solely on the average player ranking. Whereas 247, you have a component in there of number of people in the class combined with their ranking. They do a combination of, if you will, depth and quality, right? Whereas on 3 is more concerned with just quality. This is the reason why we focus on 3 for our recruiting numbers, is because we preferred that. We had conversations about it. We liked that it was more about average player rating. Well, I still agree with that. And while this class is actually probably in its top I don't know, 14, 15, no, probably closer to top 20 guys,
Yeah.
much higher in that average player rating. There are 3 guys in this class, needed pieces, things that we had to have, but they bring the average player rating way down because they are ranked against all other things. It's not like they're just ranked as a punter or a kicker or a long snapper. So those 3 pieces that I just mentioned are a part of this class. And as to that end, our average player ranking on three is much lower right now. They go off more than just that, but it's mostly that. If you look at the numbers and the way they calculate it, it's pretty close to just being that. Um, I'm sure there's a lot more in that. And if anybody from On Three is listening, I apologize. I don't know your algorithm, so I'm not trying to offend anybody. It's just clear that the average player ranking is something that they rely on. So in this case, we have 3 guys from uh, as I mentioned, a long snapper, kicker, and a punter that are rated outside the top 2,000. I think one of them is below 2,500 in ranking. So obviously their player rating, right, their grade, if you will, is going to be low, right? If they even have one, right? But it's going to bring the average down, is the point. So because On Three looks at that more, whereas 247 looks at the rating and the depth both combined, we have a much higher ranking in 247 because we have a pretty big class. It's 26 players. You remember last year, we only had 22 before transfer, I believe, 22 or 23. I can't remember where the dust settled, but it was something in that neighborhood. So a significantly larger class than what we had last year. And again, significantly more top heavy with talent. As you already mentioned, I won't steal all your thunder, but 11 guys in the top 300, also 5 guys, I think, in the top 100 per On Three anyway. I believe it's
Right.
5. So that's pretty significant when you look at that top end talent that we're working with there. So anyway, that's important thing to note on this. We didn't really move a ton. The transfers actually hurt us more than helped us because our transfer rating is lower just simply because of the low amount of transfers we took. One last thought I'll give on this. I heard Billy's interview on a different podcast this week. And the interesting thing I'll tell you is he cited a lot that the efforts were made more in keeping players. And because they were able to retain so many, which they really did a nice job of retaining, like starting talent on the roster, right? Whether it be keeping it from going to the draft and like guys like Sapp or, well, I don't know that more really could have gone, but there were a couple guys. Banks was a good one. Banks and Sapp coming back is huge, right? Both those guys could have gone to the draft. So both of them coming back, retaining a lot of talent that way and holding on to guys that were of high value to the staff to keep them from transferring. I think if you look at that, that's where the effort went. And because that happened and was successful, you can't just take 20 transfers. You don't have room on the roster, right? Remember, there are new roster rules now. You can only have 85 scholarship and 105 total. So it's totally different than the way it was before, where we were carrying 120, including walk-ons. We can't do that anymore. So they've got to be very selective in what they do there. And I think that's a really important point to call out here. It's not to say that I'm not making excuses. I think the transfer class, we had some misses. We had some guys we targeted we didn't get. I find that to be frustrating as much as well as many of you probably do. There were a couple guys I would have really liked to get in that transfer portal in this winter portal, and we did not get them. And I think those were misses, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, I don't think what we ended up with is a miss overall, right? Because again, the key here is what we kept. So those are my thoughts on that. I'm sorry if I stole all your thunder, but I'll let you give your thoughts now on the early signing day versus today and all of that.
No, great points. I love the points. No thunder stolen. I do want to give a quick correction. Mac Mulhern, B didn't mean that. You know what? You might be the number 2047th player in the class, but you're the number 1 long snapper in our hearts.
That's right. That's right. Welcome in. No offense. No offense intended.
No, not at all. Not at all. But to that end, B, it's interesting when you look at On Three and 24/7 the difference, right? I think you summed it up perfectly. Quality versus depth and quality.
Yep.
And that's the other thing too. The re-rankings are just so puzzling, right? Look at Ben Hanks, right? Down to 23rd, right? Up from 52. And by the way, Ben Hanks was quoted by Steve Wiltfong, director of recruiting for On Three, quote unquote, "This is the best DB to go to Florida since Joe Hayden."
Woo-wee. Woo-wee. Oh my! There's a lot of first-round DBs from Florida since Joe Hayden, man. That's a strong statement. What do you got?
Very strong, Steve.
Kyer Elam was first round or second? I don't remember. Henderson was definitely first.
First. Yep.
You
Kyer
had
might have
another
been
one
late
in there
first,
too. I'm
early
missing.
second.
What's that? I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Kyer might have been late first or early second, but
Right.
absolutely.
And then there's at least one or two more as well that I'm just not thinking of. I'm just not going back far enough in my head. Those guys are still in the NFL. Though I think Henderson's on a practice squad now, which is pretty surprising. But you had some others too, certainly that have been very, very good since Hayden. I mean, obviously Joe was next level, but yeah, I mean, that's a strong statement. Wow.
It
Wow.
is, and that's the other thing too, and that explains the shoot up from 52 to 23rd, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Lazar, right? Lazong Hayward, Shady Hayward, right? From 53rd down to 35th,
Wait a minute, wait
right?
a minute. His nickname is Shady.
Shady Hayward.
You know I have a new favorite player now, right?
There you go.
I'm a big stan. So if he's Shady, I'm in.
There you go. B, you mentioned Dallas Wilson. It's a shame, right, to drop from 48 to 28. Maybe
Yeah.
it's does it have to do with the familial stuff? Did he take some time off the field to go be with family? Because again, he referenced coming away or decommitting, right, getting out of his intent with Oregon to stay
Yep.
closer to home to be with a family member in Tampa. We get it, no problem.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that shouldn't have affected ranking. So his ranking is really puzzling to me that the re-rank has him drop so much. So like you mentioned, it's like
that's the
28 to
thing.
40th. And you're also talking, he went from like the second or third best wide receiver in the class, depending where you looked, to being like the eighth, I think. That's
Seventh,
crazy. I
correct.
mean, seventh.
Right,
Okay, there you go. So I mean, that's wild. That's absolutely wild that you see that kind of drop from a guy that had a good senior season. So
right.
again, one quick thought,
So
now don't mean to interrupt, but like the amount of stock you put in these individual rankings, right? Whether it's positionally, overall, all of these things. I think at the end of the day, when you look at the composite of the class, right, and you look at, like we said, top five, top 100, wherever they're ranked in the top 100, they're top 100, right? 11 top 300. And then I
yeah,
think if you go up to top 500, you get another 4 or 5 in there. I think it's another 4. So it's like 15 in the top 500. I mean, that's significant, especially when you consider we signed 26 guys. And as mentioned, 3 of them were not guys that you're going to look at the ranking for, right? Again, no offense intended. I love you guys that are coming in.
yeah.
I really do. But like when you look at it, like that's the bulk of the class in the top 500. That's wild. That's wild. So
It
anyway,
is.
go ahead.
Yeah, you got, and then Vernell, right, went from
Yep.
60 to 69. I was like, what? Okay, whatever.
So it
Hilton
depends where
Stubbs.
you look there. On three has him at like, I think on three's got him at like 31 or 32 now.
See, it's wild. And again, when I did my notes and I did the composite, I did it last night and then I did it this morning again for the shift. Hilton Stubbs at 106, Ty Jackson at 107. He's down from 95th. Jalen Wiggins, right, 139th, up from 156th, right? And again, you
Yeah.
got the quote right from Coach about what Jalen's been doing in camp, which is
Yeah.
great. Jaden Woods, 141, no change. Joseph Mbachu was outside the top 350. Now he's at
Right.
224,
Yeah.
right?
Huge, huge run on that. And Bachu could be a player, man. That could be a really good get.
Great size, big kid, right? Then you got Byron Lewis, running back, up from 286, 287, 88, wherever you see it, up to 257. And then another one, this is on the offensive line, which we need help on, right? Jahari Medlock outside of top 300, 350, down to 282. So big moves.
Yeah. Big moves. A lot of big moves in this re-rank for sure.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, outside of that, that's all I got, B, as far as to wrap up that section.
No, fair enough, fair enough. And I think that's really important to note and good to talk about. We talk about the rankings a lot because it is relative and it is important and everything else. But at the end of the day, you also have to look at what did we add, right? From a class standpoint, what did we add as far as positional pieces go? And I think
Yeah.
we got some good ones this year. I'm actually pleased with the offensive line recruiting in this class. It's not where I want it to be, but it's better than it has been, in my opinion. You've got 2 guys, possibly a third, that are legit starters within a year or 2, right? They're not going to start this year. Freshmen don't start in the SEC at offensive line unless they're just absolute freaks, right? We've got Jordan Seaton running around out there. But the point is that you really don't see that as freshmen. But once you get to that sophomore year, right, as you're going to start to see with guys like Najee Harris this year, for example, he was a sophomore this year, right? And you saw him starting to get in there. Barber started as a sophomore, right? So there are guys that can make that transition and get in there for their sophomore years. Slaughter started as a sophomore because of injury, but that's another conversation. So anyway, but you don't really see it that often. But I'm seeing guys with the offensive line that I think are really, have some potential and some upside. So we'll see what happens there. Interested to see what some of the younger guys that we got last year. But like if you look at last year's offensive line class, it was like Fletcher Westfall and that's it. Like the other guys that were in the class, they're there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to disrespect them, though Mike Williams transferred out. But you really don't see the presence of those other guys coming into play. In terms of that as freshmen, you just don't see it very often. So anyway, moving on. Let's talk about some coaching changes. I'll let you kick that off. Get us a rundown here of what's going on. I think you got some really good info on this. So let's talk about it.
Copy that. Yeah. So let's talk about the big hire, Vinny Sunseri. If he sounds Italian, that's because he is. He's hired on as our co-defensive coordinator. In case the name sounds familiar, he has come up in a couple different circles. Played for Alabama, safety, 3 years. Won a national championship 2 of those years with the Dark Sith Lord himself, Nick Saban. Graduate assistant. His father, Sal Sunseri, was linebackers coach at Alabama and the Florida D-line coach back in 2018 under Mullen. How about that? He was a defensive coaching assistant with the Patriots from 2020, then the running back coach for 3 years, and most recently, Sunseri was the Washington Huskies safety coach coming back in 2024. So he's got some experience. He's been around. He's got some coaching pedigree. He's a coach's son. He's hung around Saban for a while, Belichick for a while. Let's hope some of that has rubbed off into the DNA. So that's good, right? Outside of that, the only other things I have is an article I'm going to reference by Cam Parker from SI.com, dropped earlier today, several hours ago. We interviewed Tim Skipper for an off-field defensive analyst role. For those of you who that name might sound familiar, coached at Florida in 2015, 2016 as a running backs coach, then joined McElwain in Central Michigan. Also, he served as the linebacker coach 2017-2018 at Florida. Also interviewed for the same role, a off-field defensive analyst role, Robert Bala, the Washington linebackers coach. Okay, Bala was previously the linebackers coach at Alabama. So you got Alabama, you got Washington.
So just so we're clear, we might hire Tim Skipper or Bala. Yep. We've already hired Will Harris. We got Sunseri. How many guys are we going to take from Washington exactly?
About 2 more. So yeah.
They're going to start calling us Washington Southeast like we call Texas A&M Florida West.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Could be, right? Unbelievable. So that decision between either Bala or Skipper is going to take place over the next couple days. So we'll see. And then the other thing is when looking at this defensive analyst role, this role, as the article references, is specifically for the linebacker room to alleviate Ron Roberts of some of those position-specific duties and aid in the development of PUP, Jaden Robinson, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs. And of course, with true freshmen coming in like Ty Jackson and Miles Johnson, we need that support. Okay. So that's it for that defensive off-field defensive analyst role. Next up, Jabbar Jaluke, extended. Awesome. Billy Gonzalez, wide receiver coach, extended. Awesome. Here's where we get into a little bit of limbo. Rob Sale, offensive line, co-offensive coordinator, remains unsigned because as y'all might know, contracts expired January 31st, but is expected to return for 25. Mike Peterson, edge, remains unsigned, expected to return for 2025. And here's the big question mark that I have. Russ Callaway is rumored to be promoted to not co-OC, not co-this, co-that, but OC.
Yes,
will it happen?
However, having said that, regardless of title, Billy has already said he is calling the plays. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and get excited. Billy's calling the plays. It's already been stated. He's been more or less emphatic about it. It's not changing. So, yeah, continue.
That's it, man. As far as the coaching updates goes, I think that's all. Yeah,
Okay.
that's all I got in the bag.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll run down the same here and just I'll keep it pretty high level. Heard an interesting breakdown. Don't have the sites to reference this, and I don't have numbers either, but I'm just going to give it the overall breakdown. Sinceri's coach as safeties coach, right, in Washington, you had significant improvement, or just I don't know if it was that much of an improvement because obviously they went to the national title game the year before, but they were very strong in the secondary in terms of pass coverage. So this is interesting. So if he's going to be the safeties coach and he's good at pass coverage, they were not good at run stopping, by the way, overall as a team, but in pass coverage they were very good, and the safeties obviously play a part in that. So the question is, can he teach our safeties to cover better? Because obviously that is a significant shortcoming that we are dealing with currently. If you look at last year's game film, the safeties in coverage, just
Oh yeah.
just not good. Troquez became a lot better at it as the season went along until he had to switch to corner. It's probably when we did switch to corner because you sure as heck weren't switching any of those other guys to corner. So having said that, we did see some improvement towards the end of the year from Castell. Thornton's that's not really what he's doing out there as a strong safety, right? But it can happen from time to time, and he was okay for the most part when he was in there and playing. We won't talk about DJ Douglas. Yeah, we'll move on. But but when you look at the pass coverage that we had from the safety room, it left a lot to be desired if you look at the overall season last year. So I'm interested to see if he can come in and really make an impact there, because I think Will Harris has already made an impact in terms of the run stopping, better tackling, right? I wish we had missed tackled numbers for the season. Maybe we'll get them at some point that we can find and look them there, because the last 2 years, especially last year, was really bad. And I've got to think that, yes, we had some missed tackles this season, but it can't be anywhere near what we were looking like last year. So I think that's hopefully something that we saw improve last year, and certainly from that secondary group, I think it was a lot better. We missed a lot fewer tackles in that group, and a lot of that credit again goes to Bridges, who of course is gone, but Will Harris clearly had an impact there. I think he's having an impact in his recruiting, as I already discussed, and hopefully that part of it will take care of itself because of those coaching. And then can we get the pass coverage better because of the pickup of Sinceri? So as far as Sale and Peterson goes, again, you mentioned it remained unsigned, but expected to come back. Can't say I'm really super surprised by either one of those things. Obviously, would like to potentially see, Sale maybe move on, quite frankly, because I think we can do better there. But it is what it is. He's not terrible. I'm not saying that, but I think there's definitely some things to be desired, especially in recruiting there. So looking at that and looking where we stand, and I'll kind of move it into the next topic of what we need. I'll start with coaching. I think what's missing is some more help offensively, right? You mentioned Callaway getting promoted potentially. We'll see if that happens. Again, it's going to be in name only. He's not play calling, but Billy did reference that he was very helpful to him this year as far as some of this strategy, pre-meeting plannings, game setup, things of that nature. So maybe Russ gets a little more influence if he does get this title, and if that's the case, that would really be a good thing. I would also like to see us hire some offensive analysts, because we're hiring 47 defensive analysts, but I don't have the offensive analysts to go along with it, and I think we could really use that, obviously, as anybody who's listened to this show once ever would know, as far as my opinion on that goes. I think that's still needed. Again, it's fine if it's off-field analysts, because they're able to, contribute to the process and the potential for maybe some, expansion in the play design, right? Some less predictability, things of this nature, right? I won't go down the whole rabbit hole, but I think it would be a good thing. So gaps wise, yeah, I think we still need some more offensive help. And the one thing I will say is Billy, again, in this interview that I listened to, referenced that they absolutely have intent to hire more coaches. Now, obviously, you're seeing that with this defensive analyst position, but I hope there's some offensive analyst help as well that's planned on the horizon. There's been some rumors. I'm not going to throw out names, but there's a couple of rumors that are of interest that could potentially come in for that role, or a role, right, in regards to that. And we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to float names because I don't want to get hopes up and then have it not happen, right? So as far as players go, I think what we're still needing, what we're still missing, I'd love to see us get a better right tackle. You know, right now the projected starting right tackle is Cam Waits. We all saw how that went in Miami last year. Not good. Not good. Now, he did improve somewhat as the season went along, but not to a level where I was satisfied with his play, right? Crenshaw Dixon became the clear starter. He was clearly the better player. And, you know, he ended up being pretty okay. And Waits was his backup. So now that guy's going to be the starter. I like Cam Waits. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great story, right, in terms of coming back from injury. But he's a guy that I feel a lot like I did about Damian George. He needs to play guard. He's not quick enough with his feet to play tackle. He's too big. He's too slow. It's not trying to be mean. I think he could be a great offensive lineman, but not as a tackle. And I said that going into last season, quite frankly. And I feel like I was pretty right. So when we look at this, I think we need a tackle. It'd be great if we could pick one up. They're hard to come by in the portal, but maybe we'll get lucky and catch one in the spring. I think that would be a great addition if we could do it, right? We brought guys on in the spring portal before, right? Elijah Badger was a spring portal lad, not an offensive lineman, obviously, but still a spring portal lad that ended up being great, right? So you can definitely see some ads in the spring, and that's something that I'd like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing another depth piece at safety either, quite frankly, because while we have several safeties on the roster now, they're either young or they're maybe probably not talented enough to really play the position in the SEC, quite frankly, right? And I'm not talking about our starters in that. Our starters are fine. If Castell can figure out how to cover, they're fine. But our starters are fine. I like some of the guys. I like Gregory Smith a lot. I think he may come up and have an impact this year. But when you look at it, especially free safety, I think we're a little short there. Now, it will be interesting to see if Asa Turner gets the medical exemption that he's applied for and comes back. Now, obviously, he's a strong safety as well, but could be interesting if he's able to come back and play. It was rumored his football days might be done, but now apparently he has applied for a medical red shirt, so we'll see what happens there. So those are really the pieces that I feel like we need is, one more in the secondary and then an offensive tackle. And other than that, I think we're pretty good. The roster is as in good a shape as I've seen it in a long time, and we'll talk to that more in the next piece of this discussion. But what are your thoughts on the gaps? What do we still need?
Great points on the gaps. I will say, from an offensive analyst standpoint, we still have Dan Enos, allegedly.
Great.
He's in the building.
That's not helping me.
I know. It's like, and to that end, your point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing with as much skilled players that we have in those positions, ready to just pounce and tear up the field. They need support. They need help. They need a new vision. They need ingenuity. Billy's not an old coach, but there are definitely some older philosophies there that are, again, I'm hoping for the best. But again, I have a feeling I'll just be eating vanilla ice cream fall of 25. It's okay. But no, oddly enough, I just said in general, and as part of my notes, help on the offensive side with regards to design. And so the other thing that we talked about outside of play calling, if Russ is going to be promoted, I kind of agree with you. It might be a name only. Billy's still got his system, his scheme, right? Because he has his system, he's going to work his system, and the system is the system. Where does that sound familiar? But the other thing to understand about that is the ingenuity that we have, that we need because of the players that we have, the skill sets that we have, the talent that we have, and some of the bridges that we are trying to gap with other schools in the SEC. So there's that. Great call out on right tackle. I just said offensive line depth in general.
Yeah.
I feel like we had tackles playing guards and guards playing tackles in the past. I feel like the guard position is good. I feel like right tackle probably is the biggest opportunity. And to that end, I actually had in parentheses, yikes, to quote Richard from Tommy Boy, because if we can do something better to protect DJ Lagway, and again, DJ is shifty. He's more mobile, but we also don't want to make him run for his life, of course. Right. That would be definitely an opportunity to beef up that side there. As we mentioned earlier, cornerback is pretty much taken care of, but on the safety side of the football, I would like to see another safety or two added for depth, for complexity, especially with Now, maybe it was, an AA thing when he was here, but I think Ron Roberts is going to want to sub out as much as possible to keep bodies fresh. And let's hope the injury bug does not bite us, please, Lord, in fall of 25. And then the last thing I would say is I want at least another big bodied, physical, tight end, right?
Good call.
Outside,
Good call.
outside of Hayden, outside of Jackson, I want to see another tight. And don't get me wrong, we've got another tight end coming in. He's what I call the Moneyball tight end, right? Cameron Crossman coming in, a 2.5-star upgraded to a 3-star out of nowhere. That's why I call him the Moneyball tight end. A hugely underrated kid, but great size, 6'6" 6.5. I feel like we just need another solid tight end because of the schemes, because of the blocking, because of the heavy lifting that some of our tight ends do in that system.
Well, you got Micah Jones coming in too, right? And he's a 3-star as well, but ranks higher. He's 604th overall if you look at On3.
Right.
And I think he is I think he has potential as well. 6'4", 250, right? Pretty good size. So that's another one as well. But I'm not going to argue with you. I think there's definitely a case to be made for him potentially being for needing another one, right? Even if it's just for blocking purposes, right? And even if he doesn't play next season, but it's somebody who you could bring in that has a couple of years of eligibility and could potentially take over for Hayden Hansen after he leaves next season, right? So that's another one that you could potentially look at. So I think that's a good call, though. All right, so last thing here on the agenda. State of the team currently. Where's the momentum at? Where's the attitude at? What's the posture for 2025? Give me your take. And this is all just obviously based on kind of roster construction and things we've been talking about. It's not necessarily everything, right, that we would look at. We'll certainly evaluate this again. But what's your take on the state of the team currently and those other points mentioned?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think this is going to be a crucial year in more ways than 10, right? This is a big year 4. This is where everything comes together. Now, the one thing I will say, I forgot to mention on the coaching side, we still don't have that GM, right? That GM, the NFL style front office that's supposed to be built out. The GM search should come to an end in by the end of the month, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, to finish the season the way we finished with the momentum, with all of the things that still went wrong on the offensive side of the football that I know I will not beat a dead horse because we've already done so, to finish the way we finished, to put together a win streak, to put together a bowl win, a lot of momentum. And it showed in the early national signing day, right? Maybe not this national signing day as far as to finish it up, but the momentum was there. So, folks, regardless of what you think we need and don't need, the offensive side of football, a signal caller, all these other things, the talent that we have coming back. And as B mentioned earlier, you're restricting now the program to 85 scholarship players, 105 total players. Before, when we were fielding 132, 131, right? Big cuts. So there's a lot to look forward to. Try not to see it with too much of the orange and blue goggles. A lot of excitement going into the fall of 25. Of course, we got our favorite DJ leading the charge. You know he's going to have the troops ready. You know they're going to be fired up. They want to come play for him. They want to play with him. And that's why we've gotten the attraction that we've gotten. The momentum is high. The attitude, everything else that you can think of going into this 2025 season, everything is so palpable. We have the ability to really blow the top off the roof in the SEC and compete on that national stage for the CFP. Will it happen? Still to be desired. But I'm telling you, things if we felt good about the last 2 seasons and what we saw, how can we not feel good right now about the state of things and still pieces that need to be added going into this season?
Yeah. So I'm going to really take the orange and blue goggles off on this one. So
take them off, man. Take them off.
You talked about how we felt going into the last 2 seasons. I'll start with that. We did feel good going into the last 2 seasons. I think we felt better certainly going into last year than we did the year before, right? We didn't feel bad going in the year before, but there were some question marks. We had some things we weren't sure about. And, it looked like it was all going to kind of be okay, right? 5-2. 5-2. Going into the break. Hey, This is looking pretty good. 5-2. Not bad at all. Teams we lost to are good teams. It's all right. It's okay. We can handle this. Well, Kentucky wasn't a good team, but we'll leave that alone.
Leave it, yes.
Yeah. So we're 5-2 going in the break. Hey, all right, we're gonna get a bowl. We're gonna be fine. It's all gonna be good. Yeah, the back half of the schedule is a lot harder, but it's not. We'll certainly get a win in there. Oops, 0-5. Right, 5-7 for the season. Yikes. Then flip the script this year. We start 1-2. Right. Took us 3 games to get to 2 losses instead of 7. Right. Though technically we had that second loss earlier than that. But regardless. So now we're 1-2. We look like crap. We're not playing worth a darn, right? And then we make a turnaround, and we improve. And obviously, we finished where we did at 7-5, right? 8-5 with the bowl, but 7-5 for the regular season. So turned around, definitely got better. Ended up coming out probably where we more or less expected it, though not the way we would have expected it. Certainly, come the beginning of the season, right? Going 3-2 in that last 5-game stretch is borderline shocking, if I'm going to be real about it. So, when you look at it, I really think that the schedule is not doing us any favors. Again, slightly better maybe than last year, though I could make an argument it's just as hard because of the home away situation, right, with some of the teams we're playing. But overall, I do have optimism as it relates to the roster for sure. The roster looks good. It looks the best it's been in a long time. I was actually talking to a buddy about this earlier, and I don't remember the last time the roster looked this good on paper. Really. I mean, I do remember it was, 2009, and certainly it looked better then. But that's the last time it looked as good or better. Again, it was better. I'm not comparing this team to 2009, but it was better then. But man, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Since 2009, I certainly can't think of a team that I like the roster better on. Maybe that year with Will Greer, maybe right before the PED thing, that was pretty good too. But obviously we know what happened there. So, what I would say to this is, I would be extremely optimistic going into this year. But as you know, since our last pod, it has come out definitively, which we more or less knew, but now it's absolutely definitive, that Napier is calling the plays. And we all know what that means. So my concern is going into next season, to your point, we have all this talent, right? We have all this optimism. And as it relates to momentum, I will make a point before I get into the Napier thing. I don't know that I typically believe in momentum from season to season, right? I don't know that that's really a thing. There's so much time in between, right? Do you really have momentum that you can carry over? But I would make this point. We retained a lot of players. I believe the last stat I saw on this, and I can't cite the source, but I believe it was 8 starters on defense and 7 on offense. Yes. That's pretty good. That's pretty strong, right? That's 15 guys out of 22. Not bad, right? That's a lot of returning production, a lot of returning experience, right? A lot of returning potential, especially when you look at some of the younger guys, right? Lagway, Trey coming back from injury, right? Mizell going into a year where he's going to see the field a lot more. That's just offensively. Obviously, the defensive pieces we know, we've already discussed some of them. Sapp, Banks, Pup Howard, Graham, and Childs, right, playing in the linebacker room. There's a lot of potential on that back end. Devin Moore, if he can stay healthy, I can go on and on. But the point being is I really do think that in this case, there is a case to be made for momentum carrying over. And I wouldn't normally say that is something that I really think is a strong case to be made, but because we're retaining so much production and because of the way this team played together on the field, right, because of what we witnessed and what we saw last season, I do think you could make a case that there is some actual momentum that could be carried. And that gives me hope. Right. And then my hope gets shot in the knee by the fact that I know that Napier is calling plays. And again, it goes back to, I like things that Billy does. I think as a culture guy, he may be one of the best I've ever seen, up there with Dabo, up there with Saban, right? He's outstanding at that stuff. But just give up the play calling, man. Come on. Like, what is it going to take? I mean, at this point, the way I see things potentially going next season, it may take you losing your job, is what it looks like to me. because I don't know if we're going to deliver on expectations next year. I don't know that we're going to do a lot better than we did this year. And this is where the glasses come off completely right. I think our ceiling is 9 wins with him calling plays. I'll say it again as we go through this offseason, of course, but I think we are absolutely capped at 9 wins against this schedule with his play calling. Now, listen, I hope I'm wrong. I hope something comes along in the offseason that allows him, via an analyst, via Russ Callaway's promotion, whatever, to cause some of this play design stuff to get better. And if that's the case and we're able to take advantage of the weapons, significantly better than we were last season, which again, wouldn't take that much, but it requires some changes. If that's able to happen, then the sky's the limit, honestly. Even with some of the play calling stuff, even when some of the game management stuff that is questionable with him, it could cost us a game, but I don't think it would cost us more than that, because I think we would be in a position where we would have a big enough lead in a lot of games that it wouldn't matter as much, because we would actually be blowing the lid off some of these teams. I don't know that that's going to happen. I hope it could. I am certainly not thinking it will. So that's my take on kind of the posture going in. I think absolutely the team has the swagger. They have the lineup. They have the talent. All of those things are there. But I think you're going to get a real reality check next year, because there's no more excuses, right? Next season, there's absolutely no more excuses. There's no way you could ask for a better roster or a better setup or anything else. And we should be good. Like, we should be good next year, like real good, like playoffs or bust good for sure. Possibly even, SEC, at least title game at a minimum, if not winning it, right? But I don't see that happening right now. I just don't. And I hope I'm wrong, like I said, but that's my take going in. So sorry to end this on a bit of a downer, but that's just where I'm at, man. I can't get that out of my head.
Balloon popped.
Indeed.
But guess what? It's okay. I get the reality behind it. I get the math that you're mathing behind it, and that's a great point. The roster does look fantastic and all the pieces that we have. But again, you can have the greatest widget in the world, but if you can't bring it to market, if you can't communicate it, if you can't have that widget do exactly what you need it to do, what it's capable of doing, that widget is useless.
Right.
So
exactly right. And I hope, again, I can't emphasize it enough. It's not what I'm hoping for. It's not what I'm wishing for, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. We said it a bunch this season, right? Well, that's where I'm at. I'm planning for the worst right now. Still hoping for the best, but not seeing that as being the most likely outcome probability wise. So with that in mind, we will wrap this thing up. We're right about out an hour, I think. So that's pretty good. That's about what we were shooting for. Our next pod will be February 18th, where we will discuss the positional groups and do a breakdown of that. We did this last year. I thought it was a good episode, kind of compare and look and see now that the transfer class is more or less complete. Obviously, spring portal's still there, but it's going to be minimal additions. So now that we have the class, whether it's recruiting or anything else, we're going to take a look at each positional group, kind of get a feel of, do we think it's better or worse than where we stood last year, or the same, right? As far as a rating goes, and justify why, of course, based on the analytical look at this thing that we always try to give it. So that'll be our next pod, coming to you on February 18th, which is a Tuesday, I believe. So that about wraps things up for me. Again, as always, thanks to everyone for taking the time to listen. Hope you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've enjoyed doing it. We continue to do this just for our passion and love for Gator football, and we'll continue to do so. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for any closing thoughts you've got there, Randy.
Yeah, man, we'll take it. The passion, the love for Gator football, and hopefully the fall of 25 does not turn into therapy session 3.0. So to that end, wherever you are, whenever you may be listening, thank you so much for taking the time, and we will see you around, Gator Nation.